The subconscious mind is 88 to 95% of your brain power. It's huge, right? It's really what's driving the boat, right? We say in the hypnotherapy world that your subconscious mind is your inner 5-year-old running your life. So think think about that for a minute.
Ooh, do we have a guest that is going to shake up your subconscious mind today? Kristin Dwan is a certified hypnotherapist, Reiki Master Teacher, Calling in the One coach, author, and public speaker who specializes in soul deep healing on the subconscious and ancestral level to release you from the blockages that keep you from the life, love, and joy you yearn to experience. Her story is not only powerful. One of the things that I love about the healing process and navigating the integration between conscious mindedness and your subconscious mind is all the multiple modalities and paths. And I hope that this interview shows you that there is no one right best way that you can go about doing it. Both Kristin and I have followed multiple paths and different paths to source very similar information around the subconscious mind. But because of our paths and because of our stories, it's going to resonate differently and deeper in a different way. In fact, this is something that I point out later in this episode is that years ago, this idea of speaking to someone who labels herself as a witch would seem like super freaky deaky to me. And yet I love the fact that coming to terms and healing with that witch wound and our sisterhood wound and the connection to that word and the language around that word and the meaning around that word has created so much healing and openness and spaciousness for me that I am so excited for what you're going to learn in this episode. So pop those earbuds in, stay tuned, and just enjoy the ride of the journey of Kristin Dwan, whose transformation started literally by dying and coming back to life. Before we dive in, let me tell you about the book that started a podcasting revolution, Make Every Podcast Want You. It is not just a bestseller, it is a 2-time gold medalist, baby. This book is your ultimate guide to landing dream podcast interviews, building authority authentically, and making your voice the one they remember. If you've got a message and a mission, this is your mic drop moment. Grab your copy today in the link below and step into the spotlight that you were born for. Welcome to the Crown Yourself podcast, where together we build your empire and transform your subconscious stories about what's possible for your business, body, and life. I'm your host, Kimberly Spencer, founder of CrownYourself.com, and I'm a master mindset coach, best-selling author, TEDx speaker, known to my clients as a game changer. Each week, you get the conscious leadership strategies you need to help you reign with courage, clarity, and confidence so that you too can make the income and impact you deserve. Imagine this podcast as your royal invitation to step into your full potential and reign in your divine purpose. Your sovereignty starts here, and your reign is now. Kristin, welcome to the Crown Yourself podcast. I think we have to begin this episode just because of your story and the fires of initiation that you have faced. With what is the initiation that you're currently facing, and what were past initiations that shaped you into who you are and what you do today?
So current initiations right now is really opening myself up to being seen in different ways. Like I'm all about, like I've been on stage as a singer, I've spoken on stage as a hypnotherapist. What my next initiation is creating a deck, actually, that people use to figure out what rituals to create. The reason I decided to create this deck, the deck is called Spiritcraft, and everybody always asks me, "Hey, there's a full moon coming up. There's a new moon coming up. What should I do?" And the best way to answer that is for yourself, right? So creating this deck, really opening up all my 30 years of ritual and studying the different phases of moons and the planets and working with spirit and creating this beautiful deck for people.
Mm. What's that bringing out in you that is
It,
different than past initiations?
yeah, it's just being like flying my freak flag 100%, right? Because when I first started, I was grown, I was taught, get a real job, do something that's normal. You can have your fun and your weirdness that you like to do on the side, but you can't make a living doing what you love. That was literally what I was taught. And what I have shown the people that taught me that, parents, is that yes, I 100% can create a beautiful, abundant business doing all the weird I like to do.
I love that. But you didn't start out on this path by any easy means. So, what set you on this path of really connecting and just embodying your awesome weirdness and then turning that into a profitable stream? Because I cannot tell you how many women I speak with who just hold themselves back and limit themselves from the fullest expression of who they are and their authenticity and what they were designed and created to come to this earth to do. And you have found this amazing embodiment of that in all these multiple modalities that you're an expert in, between hypnotherapy and Reiki and witchcraft and you're just connections with spirit and in all that realm. So how did you discover these passions and what led you down the path?
So I was born as a child who really connected with the fairies. I used to make fairy soup out of flowers and rocks, and I was always playing outside. I was a tomboy. I didn't play with Barbies. I didn't, do what normal kids did. And I grew up as an only child, so I had to kind of create my own world, right? Because I didn't have brothers and sisters. So I became friends with trees and fairies and creating this beautiful world within my head and around me. And I started early at probably around 11 or 12, reading tarot and I loved rocks and crystals. And so I always knew. I knew that I had this connection. I knew that I had intuition. I would think things people would call. Like I had this sense. And really what brought me into this place of I'm here for a reason and I need to share these gifts is literally dying and coming back to life. And I've always been into the elements, right? Earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. And fire has always been an element that has claimed me in a way. My first word as a child was hot because I got burnt, not mommy, not daddy, right? So fire, hot. And at age 23, I had been doing tarot readings for people at school behind the library. I had been, really connecting with people in that way and feeling energies and moving energy on my own. But I wasn't happy. I really didn't embody like love for myself, love for life. In fact, there were times when I was a teenager that I actually wanted to end my life. Right. So I wasn't the bright, shiny being that I am today. I was in a very dark place. And what that darkness taught me was that I'm pretty strong. And so whenever people are going through a dark time, I tell them just know that that light is within you. You may not see it. You may not feel it. You may not know it's there. You can get out. We can all climb out of our own inner darkness. Sometimes we need a guide. So I love to be that guide because I've actually been in that darkness and kind of know the route, right?
Mhm.
But what ended up happening was I fell asleep with a candle burning. And the candle was meant to be a road opener candle. And so some of you may know, some of you may not. A road opener candle is a candle that you burn with a spiritual intention to open the roads to the things that you want to create and manifest in life and walk away from the things that are holding you back. I fell asleep. My cat woke me up. The next thing I know, I've got fire all around my bed. I literally had to run barefoot, wearing whatever I wore to bed that night, run through that wall of flames to get myself out of my room alive. And within that, I received third-degree burns over 30% of my body and ended up in a burn ward. I'm happy to say I am the only being that got burnt within this fire. There were many animals in the house. There were roommates I had. Nobody else got burnt but me. This was obviously my karmic lesson to learn in life. And what I learned from this is when you have those dark thoughts, right? Of like, oh, it'd just be so much easier if life just ended and I'm tired and I don't want to deal with this anymore. Literally losing life showed me what a gift life is, what a gift I am. And this time that we have is so precious. So losing my life and fighting to come back was what brought me back as the strong phoenix that I am today. And when I say losing my life, I literally flatlined on the operating table of the burn ward. They were doing skin grafting, operations on me. And so whatever they put me to sleep with, my heart did not react too well. And so they literally had to get the old ticker going again.
Did you experience anything
I did.
when you crossed over?
Yeah. So it was very interesting. There was this, I was hearing things happening, even though I was asleep, right? Or flatlined or whatever I was doing at that point. But I could hear them talking about me, about blood pressure. I could hear beeps. I could hear the surgery happening. And I felt this amazing sense of love. I didn't see a light or, the stuff that a lot of people talk about seeing. It was more a knowing and a sensing that I was going to be okay. I felt I can't even explain the love I felt. It was just such a divine love, right? And there was a decision made. Like I felt like my higher self make a decision like, no, not yet. Go back down. And so when they got me back up, I literally can say that I know what it feels like to be death warmed over. It was a long process to come back, right? And there was a lot of pain involved. And even though I was going through all this immense pain, the spirit within me, the light within me was so excited to be there and so excited to help people and really stand in my light that I knew I wanted to help the world when I was a kid. Now at 23, back at that time I was 23, at 23, I was actually ready to do it.
Mm.
And
My goodness. And I mean, yes, like the power of that experience of what death can teach us. And I think that, having had experiences that I had when I was younger and, suicidal ideation and whatnot, had someone been a guide there to be like, hey, it's not like, I don't believe in calling it a dark night of the soul. It's a dark night of your ego and everything that you thought you were and the persona of who you have been being stripped away, and it can suck. But if you allow for the process on the other side, it's so magical. And we go through these initiations of life consistently. If you are on a growth path for personal development and growing into your highest possibility, when you experience that powerful moment of what death was. Now, sometimes for some that can create some friction that there is the experience, but then was it like a smooth sailing road from then, or were there still some pretty big ups and downs?
oh yeah, I mean, yeah, it wasn't like, oh, I woke from the surgery and life was perfect, right? It was, well, there was a divine intervention that happened within the actual burn ward. So when you have skin grafting, basically the first operation that I had was where they took cadaver skin to try to put the cadaver skin on my skin to promote healing. That didn't take. So then what they do is called an autograft. The autograft is when they take your good skin from somewhere in your body and put it on your burns to promote the healing. And so when I woke up from that, that was like, I had the 30% that was burnt plus the, 20% that they took from my good skin, where they basically peel your skin off and put it somewhere else, right? So when I woke up, there was so much pain. And I just remember asking my surgeon, like, I have so much to do. I need to write a book. I need to start a band. I need to do all these things. I'm so happy to be alive. When can I get out? And I just remember him just like looking at me and shaking his head a little bit and saying, I am so glad that you want to do all these things and that you're happy to be alive, but we can't let you out until you grow some skin. And so he told me,
You literally had to grow a thicker skin.
literally, right? Or any skin, right?
Yeah.
And so at that point, that's when I had that dark night of the ego, right? Where it was like, wow, I chose to come back to this. What's wrong with me? You know, why would I choose to come back to this much physical pain? And that night I did a meditation. At that point, this is the 90s, right? I did not know what Reiki was. I didn't really have a practice. I just knew I was connected and I like to do stuff for people. But I did reach out to the universe and I said, please help. I mean, I know that I'm strong and I get that you gave this to me because I can handle it and I need it. I need some help. And at that point, I felt this energetic blanket. It felt like a blanket, wrapping me up and a suctioning happening on all of my wounds, the burns, as well as the donor sites. The donor sites were where they took my good skin off. And I felt myself leaving my body once again. And there was a little bit of a fear, right? Of like, oh God, am I really dying now? Did they give me too much meds? Like what's happening, right? I was laying there with, a drip of morphine in my veins, and I could still feel like hot irons on all the places where I had the burns. And all of a sudden, I'm lifting and I'm not feeling the pain anymore. It was the first time in weeks that I was pain free. And I felt that hug again. I felt that universe holding me. And then I started feeling myself come back down. And I was a little afraid, right? Because I knew what was down there, but I allowed and received whatever was going to happen next. I felt myself hit my body. And I still had the burns, but the pain and the heat was like 90% gone, like that. And the first thing I did was get up on my burnt feet, walk over to the little mirror that was in the bathroom, and I looked at myself. I looked at myself in the eyes and I saw the fire in my eyes. And for the first time in 23 years, I looked at myself and saw beauty. I didn't have makeup on. When you're in a burn ward, you can't take showers, you can't do your hair. You're just, my hair was a rat's nest. I looked, not physically attractive whatsoever. And I saw that beauty inside of me. I saw that power. And it was the first time that I opened up my journal and wrote a love letter to myself instead of like bashing myself, endlessly. So whatever this energy was, like, really helped not only on the physical level to take away the physical pain, but also on the emotional level, right? 3 days later, that same doctor comes in. He's like, wow, you've really turned the corner. We're going to get you out of here this week. So it went from you could be here another month to you're getting out of here, at the end of this week. And that was when I really was ignited, literally, like the fire was in me to find out what was that energy? How do I access it? How do I teach it? How do I get it around the world? And so, this is the 90s before Google. You couldn't just like Google a Reiki master and find 15 on your block, right? This this was, you had to go to a store. I went to a couple metaphysical shops around my area, looked on the wall where people put their flyers and their cards, and just started going on a journey of going to angel healers, going to, crystal healers, all the different things. And that's when I saw Reiki. And when I felt my first Reiki session, it felt the closest to that divine intervention that happened in the burn ward. And that's when I knew the healing woods needed to start.
Oh, I love that. That's it feels very similar because when I got really bad second degree burn when I was 21 years old, and it was a totally unconscious metaphysical representation of what was happening in my personal life. Because at the movie theater where I spilled hot, like scalding hot McDonald's lawsuit worthy pho on my lap, my first love at the time was there with the girl he was cheating on me with. So I was being burned in the same space. And there's like all of these synchronicities of like when you look back in hindsight, like I'm so grateful for that experience because that led me to discovering cranial sacral therapy. And I too had a doctor that was like, that is going to scar like nobody's business. And there's nothing I can really do about it too. Like, what did you do? How do you not have any scar, like any discoloration? And it was similar to that, like the magic that comes from our healing ability. And there, that experience opened up the world of self-healing, personal development, Reiki energy to me because I experienced it firsthand because I was so willing to be in that space of like I'm in curiosity mode. And I think sometimes in our programming, there is a curiosity that is also tamped down. I mean, if you had asked me 25, probably 30 years ago, that I would be speaking to a witch, I'd be like, no, that would be not possible. Because I was grown up in a culture and a religion that really put I was gonna say put a black light, but I was like shined a dark light on it and put that in a bad connotation and in a belief system that it was bad and evil and the devil. And I'm curious as to how, I mean, you've connected with the light of spirit. And I think now like people just have different translations for their own experience. Like it's just language. And so when you face that resistance, if you've ever faced that resistance to people's perceptions of the labels that you have brought into your world, what is your experience with pivoting the perceptions?
It's interesting. So I started very early in life studying all religions. I like to think of my existence this lifetime has been a comparative religion course because I grew up Irish Catholic, right? So there's that. And then I was very much into studying Wicca, back in the, like, I'd say late 80s, early 90s. And then I went into Hinduism, Kabbalah, like Buddhism, like I've studied so many different religions, not calling myself that religion per se, but just knowing I view religions as different languages to spirit. And so that's why I call my deck spirit craft, because I don't consider myself, even after training to be a priestess and 30 years of, being in traditional witchcraft as well as Wicca. There's different types of witches, right?
Just like there's different kind of Christians.
Right. No,
Right.
Really.
Same thing.
Yeah. And with all of this, and then, studying the planets, planetary magic, there's so many different magics that you can do. And so what I have come to know for myself is that spirit is spirit, and all of us can access spirit. It could be a book, it could be a name, it could be a gender, whatever you need it to be, but it's spirit, and it's listening to all of us. It's here to help all of us, no matter what we believe it to be. And so spirit craft is the tool that I'm creating for people to connect to their spirit, whoever spirit is for them. And then I also have, Spirit Craft community, which is where we meet once a month to kind of speak to whoever that spirit is. There's Christians in Spirit Craft. There's Hindus in Spirit Craft. There's people who just see it as, the universe.
Yeah, I think that that's the de-identification, especially as we enter into the Aquarian age of like the labellessness of being stripped away from like what we've been in this age of Pisces, of organized, structured religion. A lot of people are stripping away from those beliefs, and yet I see more and more people are finding that connection to spirit, God, source within themselves. And frankly, I'm seeing them be more loving and kind and compassionate. So I don't care what label you have it under, so long as you're kind, compassionate, and like in a space of service and love and to love. So as you have been navigating this relationship with spirit, what has been your experience with interacting, if any, or meeting any sort of dark spirit? Because
Yeah. So more in my 20s and early 30s, I had interesting taste in men, as a lot of us do during those times. And so, I dated this one man who presented himself to just be like a spiritual guy, and when things went south, and he was very strange, but triple Aquarius here, strange is my spirit animal. Like if you're
yeah.
strange and weird, I'm like in it, right? But there's a fine line between strange and just like not cool anymore, and being,
Yeah.
he got to a point of being very possessive, and so I had to end things. That's when I realized he was a voodoo priest. So there was a time where I had to go to my elders, right? I was in a coven at that point, and I said, "Guys, I'm dreaming of this guy killing me. I'm waking up, throwing up, like help, And I learned very early how to protect myself. Now, I will not do things to people. Yet I don't do any black magic or even gray, really.
Mm-hmm.
What I do is I protect myself with a shield. And so I actually thank this man, 20 years later. I thank him because I was able to see the power that I do wield within myself when it comes to taking care of myself, having spiritual boundaries, and really standing in what's right for me and walking away from what's wrong.
Mm.
And I will say, after I did what I did, he never called or bugged me again.
Amazing. Amazing. And I love that you differentiated something that I think a lot of people, and many of my listeners, I would assume, aren't quite sure about. It's like that black magic is like when you're doing something to somebody,
Yeah.
not like it's manipulative and doing something to somebody, versus the magic of the light is it is emanating from you, and it's in your space and protecting you. And that's where you can come from, that place of forgiveness and, gratitude for those experiences, but you're not reaching out and like trying to manipulate or do something to someone else.
Yeah, no, definitely. And really, as a Reiki master, whenever I do send Reiki and I intermix everything together, right? I intermix my meditations with my Reiki, with my ritual. So I'm sending Reiki actually to him for the good of all, is one of the big sayings within Reiki. Like, I'm not doing this just for me because my ego needs it. I'm doing it to like let you move on and go focus on someone else too, because it's not happening here anymore.
Yeah.
So I do everything for the good of all. That's a big, way that I live my life.
Oh, I love that principle of just being able to send that. That's actually one of the ways that I end all my connection emails, of like, for the good of all involved, of just making sure that, like, because it doesn't matter what the connection is, like you're establishing a connection and that creates an energetic connection. So ideally it's like for the good of all involved. And I found that has radically changed the level of connections that end up happening just in a freaking email. So with your connection to spirit, like, what are some resources for those who are maybe spiritually curious, or looking at how the mind also plays into the relationship with spirit? Because especially as a hypnotherapy master, like, there is the connection between the conscious, unconscious mind and spirit. And what is that connection? How do we access collaboration between all of the different realms?
Yeah, definitely. So yes.
If you're listening to this interview thinking, I want to do that, I want to be on more podcasts, I want to share my brilliance with the world, then I have got the service for you. It is called Podmatch. Think of it like Bumble, but for podcasting. This AI-powered platform matches you with the right podcast host so you can pitch less and get booked more. I've used it to land aligned interviews that amplified my voice and built my brand. It is literally one of the few services I recommend in my best-selling award-winning book, Make Every Podcast Want You. Sign up now at podmatch.com in the link below.
The subconscious mind is 88 to 95% of your brain power. It's huge, right? It's really what's driving the boat, right? We say in the hypnotherapy world that your subconscious mind is your inner 5-year-old running your life. So think about that for a minute.
Oh, and it sucks when she starts to run your business. Like, don't let her. Take her out of the CEO seat.
So the subconscious mind is created between 0 and 8 years old. And we are just sponges during that time. So we create what are called knowns, like what we know is true about life. And we learn these knowns by experience, by listening to parents, teachers, older siblings, friends even. And we have positive knowns and negative knowns within life. You know, a positive known could be, I love birthdays because everybody comes over and gives me a present and we eat cake and sing songs and everybody looks at me and loves me. A negative known could be, oh, I don't like it when mom tells me to go in the corner and tells me no. I love hugs and kisses. Those are right. So we have all these like positives and negatives. What's interesting, though, is we can also create negative knowns about positive things and positive knowns about negative things. So imagine you're playing in your room. You're not even like with your parents, but you can hear them, you know? And the thing about the subconscious is you don't have to be consciously listening to something for it to take it in as truth. So you're playing your dolls or Barbies or drawing or whatever you're doing, and all of a sudden mom and dad are arguing about money. And dad lost his job and mom starts to cry because she's not sure how she's going to put food on the table. So all of a sudden your subconscious is creating this like negative known about money. Like money is scary. Mom's crying. Dad's upset. We don't want this money thing coming in. We don't want it to ruin our life, right? You can also create positive knowns about negative things. So let's say 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. Uncle Joe comes and Uncle Joe makes you laugh. He does card tricks. Uncle Joe is really cool. You walk outside one day, Uncle Joe is smoking a cigarette, right? So all of a sudden cigarettes become a positive because if Uncle Joe does it, then anybody should do it, right? And so when we have these knowns, they kind of sit there in a, you know, the Rolodex of your mind, basically. And what ends up happening is around 9 to 11 years old, we create a barrier between the conscious mind and the subconscious. That barrier is called the critical mind. Now, the critical mind wants to make sure that whatever decision you're making with your conscious mind, and the conscious mind is where we analyze, where we make decisions, where we have willpower, you know, how we speak. This is all the 10%, 10 to 12% of your brain power. So that critical mind is there to make sure that you're not making a decision that's going to kill you, because the subconscious is too busy keeping you alive. It's making sure you're breathing as you sleep, your blood's flowing, your eyes are blinking, like your organs are doing what they need to do, right? So it has a very important job. And unfortunately, what can end up happening is we make good decisions, right? Like our willpower is there. I'm going to talk about myself for a moment. So I lost 160 pounds using the power of my subconscious mind. And basically, consciously, I knew that I needed to lose some weight or else I might die. So obviously, this decision of eating less of the bad things, doing more, physical activity, drinking more water, these are all obviously good things that are not going to kill me, right? But the content, that little gatekeeper was like, oh, but wait, remember when you were 8 and eating cake made you feel better because dad left and it filled a hole? Why wouldn't you want to fill that hole? Why would you go through life without that shield? Right? So that's kind of how these two can fight with each other. What we do within hypnosis is create new knowns within you. So what I needed to do in order to actually create this new being that I am, 160 pounds lighter, is I needed to take that willpower and that habit, right? The willpower is like, I'm not going to eat this thing, or I'm going to eat the good thing and do the exercise and everything's going to be great. On the subconscious level, the habits are there. This is 88%, this is 12. What's gonna win when something
Yep.
emotional happens, right?
Subconscious wins every time. It's like betting on a fighter. It's like, you're gonna bet on the heavyweight or like and the ingenue stepping into the ring.
Exactly, exactly. So what I had to do was reparent myself basically as that 8-year-old who learned that eating cake and the carbs and the things that made her feel better, we're going to cut ties with that, and we're going to instead drink water, hike, and do the things that are actually good for our health. So is life perfect now that I've done hypnosis on myself and lost 160 pounds? No. I still have emotional things happen. I still have losses. Like, life is going to life, right? But what has happened is the habit is now get out into the forest, start hiking or swimming, or get physical. Like, I get physical when things go down, because in being physical, I'm actually getting myself closer and closer to my goal. So people who follow me on Facebook are like, God, you hike all the time. You're always in nature. I'm like, I'm going through stuff. And that's how I deal with it, right? And that's how I lost that weight, or released. I don't like to say lost because I'm not looking for it again.
Same. And I love how conscious you are with your language, because yeah, I never said I lost weight or poundage, or like when people are like, oh, lost the baby weight. And I was like, no, I set it free.
Yeah. It's no longer
It,
a home for here.
it was a season that was involved with developing a human, and now I'm happy to set it free. Like, that was the season that it was there, and now it's no longer. But that, yeah, I love the fact that, I mean, you healed yourself and that relationship, and I know the value of that because I did the same when I healed my relationship with my body with a 10-year battle with bulimia, and then completely reprogrammed my mind and how I perceived food and how I perceived my body, just through the awareness of the emotional spaces that I was going into, and like being able to be that observer of my thoughts, and that intuitive knowing of like starting to trust myself again around food, and that healing that can come when you are on the other side. And I hate that the medical system keeps it on your records for life, because I was like, dude,
Yeah.
it's like becoming a butterfly. Like, yeah, I'm going back to being a caterpillar. It's that was one version of me. Here's the next initiation that I've gone through. And so how did you bridge the gap though, from being someone who at 23 was super into spirituality, mysticism, nature, into like the power of the mind and how that plays a role with spirit and the interconnected dance of both?
So I view like hypnotherapy and Reiki as my pillars of really just life. I used hypnotherapy before becoming a hypnotherapist to, heal myself, stuff with my father and that little inner 8-year-old. When I started really working on that, when I say her, the inner 8-year-old within me, my subconscious, her ideas of I'm not good enough, people can leave me, people don't stay, right? And I make myself feel better with food. I reintegrated much better beliefs about myself. And what's interesting, so my dad was an alcoholic for like my whole life, basically, right? That's just what I grew up with. And even well into adulthood, that's what I knew to be, true. And when I started to lose the weight or release the weight, and I started to really change myself and become this phoenix, guess who stopped drinking? My dad. So it's very interesting, right? How like we are all connected. Of course, family is connected, but literally everybody in the world is connected. But your family, your bloodline, when you start to heal yourself, it trickles out to others, to the future, to the past, right? And so what ended up happening was Reiki was it was my jam for, 20 years. And I focused, the healing woods began as a massage business, and then I added Reiki to that. And then I decided, when I saw the huge shifts that happened for me, actually harnessing that energy of the subconscious mind, then I went to hypnotherapy college for a few years and really dug deep. I will say, right, like, when you choose somebody to work with, definitely make sure it's somebody who's done the work on themselves, but also has a good amount of training, because your subconscious is not a thing that you want to hand over to just anybody, right? There are people
Amen.
there are people who take like a weekend course and then they're a hypnotherapist, right? Like, I,
Mm-hmm.
I literally I have 2,500 hours of just training.
Mm-hmm.
So, you wanna make sure you're with somebody who views it as the honor and the very, like, deep, God, just sacred part of you that it is. It's also your biggest cheerleader. It can be that thing that keeps you right where you are, that anchor that doesn't let you move. But once you kind of like reintegrate things, it can be your biggest cheerleader to push you right where you want to be. So taking those two together, like I do what I call hypno Reiki, right? Where I'm sending Reiki to you as I'm taking you through a journey. And if you want to go even deeper, doing hypnosis for an hour and then doing Reiki for an hour to really forward you into the future that you're creating. And I just, it, to answer that question, it's almost like that's what the healing woods made me do. Like, my work is my journey. It's my own journey of healing. And I feel like I I heal myself through things, and then I receive these
Mm-hmm.
gifts and this wisdom, and then, of course, I wanna help others with it. And so the Healing Woods has become many different things in the 25 years I've been doing it, right? And I love that about it, because I don't wanna be the same person for 25 years, right? And so my business shifts as well, as I shift.
Yeah, and it's allowed for the evolution of that, and I think that that's such a beautiful piece of also looking at, because that's like with my coaching company, which I've had for 9 years now. Like, I'm just adding different modalities. And at first, when I started, it was just NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnosis, and that was it. And it was just a little bit of hypnosis with a lot of NLP, and a lot of timeline therapy. And then it evolved into having processes and supporting really like high level entrepreneurs, and just being able to craft like this beautiful holistic picture, and then adding in breath work and somatic work back into it, and like allowing for those evolutions of those modalities. I think I get certified in like in every major thing with every pregnancy that I have. And I will say it definitely helps each time, because my gosh, I remember when I first released the emotion of anger, and it was through timeline therapy, which is a combination of hypnosis and NLP.
Yeah.
And I released 14 generations of anger. And I remember that moment, it changed everything for me. And just being able to suddenly, like, literally the feeling of being able to live with freedom. Not saying that I've never gotten angry again. Believe me, my kids, my kids have had a moment where they ticked mommy off for sure. Um, but I have the tools to evaluate that space. And I think that that's where when you're working with a skilled practitioner like yourself, like who's able to understand the energetics of who you're letting into your sphere. And I think that's so important. Because there's a big difference between like going for like an astrology reading with the psych down the street, and versus like working with or getting a Reiki session from some person in their garage. Like, and actually, getting somebody who's been really dedicated to the craft of understanding and mastering energy and the various fields that we all are operating in, which is still new, and it can still seem very woo-woo to those who are very scientifically inclined, who I know you're listening and you're like, what the heck is this? So I know that there's a ton of backing in that science-wise.
Yeah. Yeah, what's lovely about doing what I do currently, right? When I first started, oh yeah, woo train, what are you even doing?
Yep.
What is this? Like, really? Right? And so that was the late 90s, early 2000s, but I'm so happy to be alive for this time because actually, hypnotherapy has been scientifically proven with many different hospital that they would go into hospitals and do tests on people who would receive hypnosis versus people who didn't with, the same types of issues or the same types of operations and surgeries. And all the time, like literally all the time, the healing, the emotional aspect of the person, like their how they feel about themselves, about life, and how they heal as far as like the time is always basically cut in half. And I've experienced that
Mm.
many times with different surgeries I've been through. The really, really where I am super excited too is there is a Reiki master out there who took his time and money to employ an actual, create a scientific experiment, not at a yoga studio, not
Mhm.
at a wellness center, right? Like, he actually went to a lab and had the scientists look at water. He sent water from across the, country, so it was even distance Reiki, right? And they tested the water, the molecular structure of the water before, during, and after the Reiki sessions. It changed. Not only did it change, it always changed for the better. So the reason he chose water to scientifically, prove that changes water is guess what we're made out of, right?
Water, 75%.
Right? And he's one of my friends now. I love him. His name's Torsten Lang. And you can look up Reiki science and it will show you like the actual pictures and how the water changed. So it's like I don't have to believe that Reiki works anymore. It's like proven, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great time to be alive right now. For sure.
It's the coolest time to be alive when so much of science is catching up with what the ancient mystery schools have like always been teaching.
Yeah.
And it's just science has always just been kind of catching up to spirituality, but that's because we've had to accept that there is spirit, something beyond this materialistic 3D world.
Yeah.
And when we do, though, I think that creates a great sense of purpose.
Oh yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
what do you see now with the people that you work with, like as they get more connected and integrated with their spirit? So there's greater coherence between all the planes of existence. How do you see them transforming their lives, operating because they're in congruence more so?
I'm seeing a lot more people standing in their power and really being who they are. And what's interesting is when we had the pandemic hit, right? God, what, 5 years ago now?
4 years.
Jeez. It's like, whew, it seems like like a decade ago, but it
Yeah.
also seems like yesterday. But, so that was when I actually started Spirit Craft, like, and I just did it for free because everybody was, like, freaking out, like, "What's happening? We have to shelter in place. I don't know.
Mhm.
What do I do? What do I do?" I was solo, like I lived alone during all that, and what I ended up doing was creating my own connection to spirit so I could get through the times of loneliness or fear or, whatever. God, what a year that was. So many things going on.
There's so many things. And so much. I honestly think that people have not collectively healed and we've kind of like swept it under the trauma rug.
Yeah.
And that's why people online are like particularly vicious recently, like where I'm just like, oh, you must really be hurting to be like, because it used to be where you would post something that somebody might disagree with, and it's fine. It just kind of mosey along, keep scrolling. Now it's like I'm gonna show you how right I am, and I think it's a small micro example of the collective healing that I think we all need to do
Yeah.
to unlock our true power.
Yeah. And so just with like, there's been women that have been with me for the whole 4 years through Spirit Craft, and I'm
Amazing.
seeing them just really blossom. Life changes, like one moving to a different state, stopping um, a really good job that she had for over a decade and just saying, I'm going to trust in spirit. And I know that I'm not supposed to be doing this. And I'm going to go move to this whole new place and completely change my life. Right. Like I'm seeing these women flourish is what I'm seeing. And that doesn't mean life is perfect. Right. Like there's some fear around making big changes like that. There's stress. Right. But it doesn't matter how stressful life gets when your core is strong and you are rooted in what's possible for you, and you have that direct connection, that gnosis with what is above, not having to hear it from somebody else or read it in a book, like just knowing, right? Like
Hmm.
that is the beauty I'm seeing with people now that they are connecting in that way. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I see it too. I can completely agree. I think that was that gnosis of learning how to trust yourself. And I think that's coming out more so in the past few years of just people learning how to trust their intuition. And you, you've used spirit and intuition. Are they interchangeable? Is that two? I mean, there's different language around it, but like,
Yeah.
what is the difference between spirit and intuition?
So for me, my belief on that is my intuition is mine. It's kind of my radar that goes up, like, because spirit's sending me something, right? Like,
Yeah.
this person might look great, but I just have the spidey sense that no, I shouldn't do this thing, or this might look really weird and not make sense, but I'm still gonna do it. you know, like,
It's like a Wi-Fi router.
yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah. I mean, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense because you're getting the signal, but there's something that has to like translate that signal into our human into some form of language or awareness or something. How does your intuition communicate to you?
It's a deep knowing. There's different ways. So when I'm in meditation, sometimes I'll see things. I can, kind of like see flashes of things, or just knowing, like waking up from my meditation and like, all right, that's what I need to do. It can come to me. I do a lot of work with my ancestors, and this is the perfect time to be working with your ancestors around Halloween, by the way. And so I do a daily practice with my ancestors, and I will literally just talk to them like they're around me. I have pictures of them up. I light candles for them, and I ask them for help because truthfully, spirit is big. Spirit has a lot to deal with the whole universe and everybody on the world, and who knows what else is going on other planets, right? And your ancestors are your first line of defense, your first line of manifestation, your first line of healing. They want to make sure that you are doing well in life.
Mhm.
So that's usually, where I go as far as to connect really quickly to spirit, right? But yeah, I hope I answered your question. I feel like I went on a tangent, but
Oh, I love that because I think I'm curious though with speaking to ancestors, especially for those that you like who maybe have had a complex relationship with their ancestors on
oh,
on this earthly plane. And like my father has passed on and during while he was alive, we had a bit of a complex relationship very similar to yours and your father, alcohol addiction, etc. But that when he passed, I felt his full spirit as the free, peaceful, loving, generous soul that he truly was at his core. And when I visited his grave, I was like, I'm never going back there again. Because I immediately felt literally like I was being choked and strangled. And so when you're in dialogue with ancestors, does that is are there facets of the ancestor that you're like that can maybe deceive you or maybe like not that they don't have your highest and best, but they are just kind of misinformed, kind of like how people sometimes give advice on this earthly plane and you're just like, I think you're just misinformed.
so I agree 100% with you because I have experienced that with some of my ancestors where it's like my belief in working with my ancestors is that when we are on this earth in a body, we have an ego, we have emotions, we have, all these things that anger, stuff that we've held on to since we were kids and maybe we're 80, right? So
Hmm.
we've got this like all this stuff going on. When we release the body, we are 100% who we were always meant to be. We are that light. We are that
Mhm.
spirit. So yes, if you've had, a not stellar relationship with an ancestor, it's up to you. If you don't want to call out to them, that's totally fine. You don't have to. What I have experienced though is that when I did, I felt who that person really always was meant to be in life, and that she was always there for me. It was my aunt. And we did not have a good relationship. There was some mental health stuff going on, and she was very angry hermit. But I know that she is that spirit of hers loves me because there were I was, going through her house once she passed on, and, I was going through and trying to find valuables or just try to make sense of anything because she died without making a will or anything like that, and I was led to different places of her house. She was kind of a pack rat. And I knew that it was very important to her. I don't know how I knew this, I just knew that it was very important for me to go through and find all of the ashes of her she had, like, 20 different ashes of, pets that she had. She was a big we have that in common, like, was a big animal person, lived in the, redwood forest. She had the life I wanted, basically, like, we were very much the same. Um, and so I told her, and I had a talk with her in her house. I said, "Show me where your animals are, and I will do it." And so I was going through weird boxes for no reason, and there's ashes, right? And she was just showing me all the different places just by knowing. And I felt this, like, happiness and this joy from her, where before when I thought of her, didn't feel like happiness and joy really, but she was so grateful, that I was finding these animals for her and releasing them, because if anybody else found them, they would have just thrown them away, you know?
Mm.
So, yeah, it's interesting to work with, ancestors that maybe you don't have the best relationship with, and it's also very healing to work with them on the spirit realm because sometimes they can be much more for us in spirit than they ever could be on earth,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
I was having a conversation with a friend of mine whose father passed around the same as mine, and she also said, yeah, she has a better relationship now with her father, which seems so weird, like,
Right.
but we do. And I just the other day, I mean, the synchronicities are ridiculous as far as like how we manifested our home. And like my dad's name was Rock, and we literally live in the town of New Brown Rock. So like, it's very guided. And that experience of being able to have that relationship beyond, but also not depend on that.
Yeah.
Like to have that communication, but not have that have to be like a dependency. Because I do think my dad and I know my dad and I had a soul contract for some of the experiences that I had growing up, and how that has served me in being able to serve in another way.
Yeah.
And so when you're doing Reiki, like, do you feel soul contracts from other people?
Yeah, more with the Akashic work I do. I'm an
Okay.
Akashic records reader. I will feel it with Reiki. Reiki, I'm more focused on like the energy, clearing what needs to be cleared, manifesting, that kind of thing. The Akashic realm is where soul contracts live, karma lives, past life stuff, future life, right? Like all of these beautiful contracts that we create and not so beautiful ones, right? So I will do energy work through my Akashic readings that, can help to dissolve cords and rewrite contracts and those kind of things. Yeah.
Mm. What, because I've always been Akashic record curious, and I've heard it thrown around. And so I know my audience is as well. They may be a little bit more well versed in it, but what can you go a little bit deeper into what that is, what that looks like, how to understand what those soul contracts are?
Yeah. So I like to view the Akashic realm as kind of like a big library. And there, every single lifetime that your soul has ever lived is like a big novel. And there's different people in it, there's different chapters, there's different things that go down, right? And so the Akashic records keepers are like librarians of your soul. And I go through, so it's a very conversational reading. It's not me just like doing the thing and then telling you information. It's us having a conversation as I'm half on this realm with you and half up in the Akashic realm. And so I like to guide the person receiving to think about like what are things that you feel stuck with in life, now, or fears that you like grew up having for no reason, right? It could be something that happened to you in a past life that you're holding on to, your soul is holding on to. And I go through and I ask these questions to the Akashic realm. The beautiful thing about the Akashic realm, and it's going to be different for every single reader. So I do want to put that out there. Like every Akashic record reader is going to have their own way of doing work there. How I was taught is, be open to the Akashic wisdom keepers, but also be open to their guides as well. So sometimes I'll see ancestors, I'll see the guides that you have. Maybe they're nature spirits, maybe it's animals, different things that are guiding you. And also have it not just be like, hey, you were the Queen of England in 1700. It's not about the story, necessarily. It's more about the emotions that are left and the experience. And let's say that let's talk about witches, right? Let's say that, I have a past life of being a witch in the 1500s and I was hung. So maybe I get, I feel like I can't really like show who I am or speak my truth because I've still got that noose around my neck, right? Things like that, where I will actually help to take off that noose. I will help to plant a seed of you really standing in your power and moving forward with who you are.
That's so cool. That's so good. I don't know if it means anything, but as you were speaking, I was like, my ring finger on my right hand was getting like searing pain, like almost like it was being nailed. And I was like, what does this mean?
Wow.
I'm gonna look that up later. But it's just, there's so much to explore. I think the beautiful thing about talking to you, Kristin, is like being open to all the different possibilities, because there's so much more than what meets the eye. And I forget how much the eye actually perceives, but it's like an infinitesimal percentage compared to what actually is available in our realm, even in just the 3D realm.
Right.
And so I would love to pivot into a little bit of rapid fire. All right. Who is your favorite female character in a book or a movie, and why?
Wonder Woman.
Yes.
I used to, I mean, I had the Wonder Woman doll. That was the one doll I had because I didn't really have Barbies, but I wanted Wonder Woman when I was a little girl. And I used to twirl around and like pretend I was flying in my invisible plane. And she was just so badass. And as an adult, going to see that first Wonder Woman movie where she's like, you know, with the shield and she's just going towards the men who are shooting at her. Like that was just so beautiful to watch as a strong woman, And yeah, I feel that she planted that seed in me of like women have power and we can do whatever we want.
Amen. You know, I have watched every single Wonder Woman has come out on a year that I was pregnant.
That's so cool.
And now this year, there's no new Wonder Woman, but there's Wicked coming out, which has been my jam for forever. So I'm like, what does that mean about who this soul is going to be when they come out into the world? So amazing. What person would you want to trade places with, alive or alive and in their time, to be in their body, be in their mind, and see how they thought and experienced the world?
God, there's so many.
Any person in human history.
Wow. This is random, but I gotta go with it because she's coming in so hardcore, but Janis Joplin.
Nice. I could see that, especially with your rock band background.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I grew up loving her and people always said I grew up in the wrong era. Like, yes, I was a goth and listened to goth music from the 80s, and I listened to Velvet Underground, Janis Joplin, right? I was like so 60s as well. And she's just so soulful. I wouldn't want to, be experiencing maybe the addiction and that side of it, but just her singing at Woodstock, I want to experience that and just like she's like a conduit of spirit through her voice. So that would
Oh, yeah. She's epic. And I too also have had that where I was like, I listened to the Doors and Joplin and like the 60s. I could have gotten down with the 60s. What is your money routine?
My money routine, yes, I love this. So my money routine is to have a relationship with it, not like, oh God, like there were times in my 20s, especially after the fire, I had a lot of debt. I had medical debt. I had to buy a whole like wardrobe again and just everything, even a car. I didn't mention this, but my car, the day before the fire, I got into a semi truck accident. So I didn't have a car either. Right. So like my whole life. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That weekend was transformational, 100%. And back then, when I had all that debt, my money routine was like, "Oh God, who's calling for, for what? And am I negative? Like, oh God." Now my money routine is celebrating each dollar that comes to me and being aware of it, right? Like keeping my records and enjoying keeping my records, not like, "Oh God, I gotta do this, I gotta do that." And visualizing, like, what the next level is, calling in money as if it's my best friend and I have a room for it to stay in my house, and, like, all the fun things we're gonna do. That's a lot of different things, but yeah, I have a lot.
So beautiful. I love it. I love it. What do you define to be your queendom?
My queendom? My life. I feel like I've created that queendom, right? Like, I live in nature, I've got a beautiful home that represents who I am 100%, and just owning that, loving where I am and knowing that I deserve more is queendom as well, right? It's not about like, "Oh, I wanna leave this so I can get better." It's like, "Wow, this is amazing, and I'm going to the next queendom."
Amazing. And lastly, how do you crown yourself, Kristin?
I crown myself with nature. Like, every time I'm in nature, like, if I'm at the ocean, it's, my mermaid crown. If I'm in the forest, it's the ferns. Like, I really do feel like my highest and most connected to spirit when I'm in.
Gorgeous. Now, I know you have your deck that's coming out, and like share more about that, how we can work with you, how we can explore all of these different realms and connection to spirit and to finding that connection within ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, Spirit Craft is a multi-level experience. There's once a month we meet around, it's all online as well, so I can work with anybody in the world. And once a month during the full moon, we're going to meet online. You're going to receive some Reiki. You're going to receive some hypnotherapy. Sometimes I have a guest come on and talk about other ways of connecting to spirit that I'm not, I don't do. I just like to open it up to all forms of spirit. And that is once a month. And I would love for you guys to become part of that. You can find out about that on thehealingwoods.com. And there's a Spirit Craft tab right there. The deck is, I'm manifesting, and I'm putting this out here too. If you have any artists, I'm looking at artists right now. I have the deck created as far as like, I've got the outline. I know what each card is going to be. There's 99 cards. This is not like any deck that's ever been made. It's not a tarot deck. It's also not an oracle deck. It's a ritual creation deck. So it's a deck that helps people create a ritual. So if there's any artists that are interested in that, definitely hit me up. I'd be excited to see your work. And I also am giving your listeners a free gift if they want to. And I'm sure you're going to link this.
Yes, we'll link everything in the bottom in the description for sure. What is your free gift? Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. My free gift is to download a hypnosis session. It's a beautiful journey that brings you into a feeling of peace. And so use that whenever you're starting to feel, any type of chaos around you or any fear or anything. Just brings you right into that feeling of peace so you can experience what hypnosis is like with me.
Mm. Kristin, thank you so much for coming on the Crown Yourself podcast. You have been such a wealth of information, transformation, and sharing your initiations, as I know so many people are going through their own right now. You may not call it that. You may call it a challenge or a struggle or a holy fuck, what's happening in my life moment. But
Yeah, had a few.
But whatever it is that you are going through, just know that there are so many tools that are available to you between on the physical plane, emotional plane, mental plane, and spiritual plane available. And I invite you to explore as many of the ones that feel most aligned for you so that you get to get through your initiation. And it doesn't have to be fully by fire.
Right, right.
And with that, my fellow sovereigns, own your throne, mind your business, because your reign is now. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If what you heard resonated with you, be sure to subscribe and start creating a bigger impact now by sharing this with a friend. Just by doing that one simple act of kindness, you are creating a royal ripple to support more people in their sovereignty. And if you're not already following on social media, connect with me everywhere at crownyourself.now for more inspiration. I am so excited to connect with you in the next episode. And in the meantime, go out there and create a body, business, and life that rules. Because today, you crown yourself.